Love keeps its own hour. Or does it survive for years and still arrive whole? I am Lord Edward Pembroke. I committed the audacity of falling in love with Sophia, the youngest sister of my dearest friend, Edmund Harland, the Duke of Grantham. His story with Yelena has already been told here, and you will find it in the cards and the pinned comment. But watch it later. For now, do not leave this video, for I must show you what I am about to do to win the heart of the lady who has ruled my thoughts for years. A serene beauty, a delicate heart I guard in secret, together with a nightly habit no one knows about. Curious? If your pulse has already quickened, like this video, subscribe, and come with me, before Grantham decides to throw me from Westminster Bridge.
London, 1851. Mornings at Grantham House always arrive first in the breakfast room. The soft clink of porcelain, the thin steam of tea, the warm bread that makes the butter smile. I entered slowly, more from habit than necessity. The respiratory. Crises are occasional now, manageable with a shawl and a measure of prudence. And found my brother, Edmund, reading 2 letters at once, as though it were a new form of chess, while my sister-in-law, Yelena, was arranging a small vase of white tulips on the table. Dobre utro, mój svet. Good morning, my light, she said, and I always suspect that Russia invented a better way of saying such things. Good morning, both of you, I replied, taking my seat where the sun touched without insisting. Danvers brought my tea with the care of one who knows my rhythm, and Edmund, without lifting his eyes, asked, "Ready for another attempt in the garden?" I laughed. Call it an attempt, and you already give me courage. Today is clear, and I promise I shall not compete with the wind. Yelena added, "Take your shawl, Sophia, and if you tire, sit. The garden does not take offense. There is a lightness in being loved by busy people. No one pushes, no one holds you too tightly. They simply leave the world ready and trust that you will find your own pace." We spoke of little things. A letter from Count Osipov confirming, a visit, the week's opera, a tulip that had opened late. And before Edmund could tease my new discipline, Danvers announced, Lord Pembroke. My brother folded the letters in a single gesture. "Punctual as the Queen's clock," he said, smiling. And with the same dry humor, Yelena added, conspiratorially. I signaled to Danvers, "Say that we await him." But the call of fresh air spoke louder. "I shall go to the garden for a few minutes. If I do not return, it is because I have been abducted by a tulip," I announced. Edmund raised a brow. "I will not argue with abductors of such stature." Yelena fastened a mother-of-pearl pin at my shoulder, the kind that secures shawls and promises. "Go. The flowers have been longing for conversation." The garden was damp and clearly pleased with itself. You know when the grass gleams just right and the birds all have opinions? It was that sort of morning. I walked toward the pergola because I like the discreet sound of gravel underfoot, a sound that reminds me I am here, whole. I stopped before the white tulips, my favorites for as long as I can remember, and there was that precious instant when I could fill my lungs without thinking of the act itself. It is simple, but to me it is a small celebration. "Good morning, Lady Sophia." The voice reached me before its owner did. Edward has this talent for announcing his mood with his tone. And when I turned, he was already at a comfortable distance, close enough for me to choose whether I wished him nearer. "Good morning, my lord," I replied with a smile, because he always brings the feeling of a hallway filling with light. Forgive the breach of etiquette. And I'll confess right away that I came early to see whether the tulips survived a cold night. "They survived," he said, brushing a petal lightly. "The gardener has a good hand." He studied the bed, serious for a moment, then slipped back into a lighter tone. "Ah, so that's the secret. The gardener talks to them. And here I was thinking I needed Latin names. Some flowers like Latin, mine prefer confidences." He laughed with his eyes. "Confidences tend to grow better blooms. Have you noticed how at this hour the light sketches lace on the petals? You can almost hear the tulips breathing. They like to be noticed that way. I answered softly. I've been trying to learn from them, arrive gently without startling, he said with an easy humor. If you permit, I'd test that theory with a short walk. We walked slowly among the flower beds. Edward offered his arm, not in that burdensome way, but in the way that asks, and I accepted, grateful not to have to explain. Do you feel well today? He asked discreet. Well enough to steal a conversation before Edmund summons you to serious matters, I replied. Heaven forbid I should stand between a lady and her tulips, he said, falling half a step, behind when he noticed I had slowed my pace. I like this prudence of his. He adjusts without turning the gesture into proclamation. They say you have a fondness for the white ones, he ventured, feigning secrecy. Controlled fondness, I corrected. The red shout, the yellow celebrate, the white ones listen. Then that is why you favor them, because they are good listeners. Perhaps because they return me to calm, I admitted, knowing that with Edward one may speak truth without turning it into drama. He looked a moment longer than one might at a flower, as though measuring the light, and I teased, If you continue to gaze so, you shall end up giving the tulip a title. I had thought of her serene flower, but I fear London's court would protest, he replied at once. I laughed, and laughter is always a sign that the body trusts. How is your mother? I asked. Better, and insisting that I eat something substantial when I come, here, as though Grantham House were capable of serving less than a banquet. I shall give orders that you be served only an apple in one of Edmund's speeches, I teased. That would kill me from tedium, not from hunger, he returned, and the conversation drifted into the sort I like, light, with an undercurrent of affection, never rushing. We remained silent for a minute, the good sort of silence that does not require polish, and I turned once more to the tulips. Perhaps I lingered a little too long. Perhaps it was only enough to breathe beauty without haste. When I lifted my eyes, I found his fixed on me with a concentration I cannot quite describe. It was not intrusive, not sorrowful, not pity. It was full attention. Forgive me, he said, withdrawing his gaze as one pulls back a knight on the chessboard. Sometimes I forget that contemplation, too, requires courtesy. You need not apologize for light, I answered, and I kept that phrase without knowing why. There are words born ready to return later. May I escort you inside? Edmund will be glad to use me as an excuse to ignore half a pile of papers, he offered, in the tone of one who knows the house. You may, but I promise to inform him that you attempted to fulfill your duties and were abducted by my flowers. Then pray, do not ransom me. I am laughing too loudly to be received by his grace with due respect. We crossed the path, back, and he accompanied me to the door as one escorts something precious without ostentation. Before entering, I picked a single tulip, always one, never a bouquet. It is a rule I made to spare the flower bed. And he held the stem to shield it from the wind. Thank you, I said. I did nothing, he replied. You did. Spared a petal from making a needless curve. I like sparing needless curves, he confessed, amused. Keep that. It may be useful when Edmund begins to speak of diplomatic routes. Ah, so today I am to be sacrificed at the altar of politics? He laughed, and at that very instant, Danvers opened the door. My lord, his grace awaits in the study. Edward inclined his head to me with a bow fit both for the century and the heart. Until later, Lady Sophia. Until later, my lord. I entered with my tulip and one of those discreet contentments that make one wish to choose another good morning tomorrow. I placed the flower by the window. The glass multiplied the white, and for a brief moment I thought that some mornings, those that begin with tea, laughter, and an unhurried walk, are all I ever prayed for when breath was scarce. Gentleness, company, and a house that speaks softly when needed. As for the rest, What is meant to bloom will find its own time. I am not in haste. And if ever I should be, Yelena will remind me that haste is the sister of anxiety, and we shall politely ask her to wait outside.
My house holds many rooms, yet only one truly belongs to me. Belongs in the primitive sense of the word, a shelter where the world does not enter with its boots. I call it a studio. The servants, out of modesty, persist in calling it the frame storeroom. It is there I light candles when the city sleeps and allow the night to lend me silence. I paint by the warm glow of flames until the first light wounds the window, because there are shadows that reveal their outlines only before dawn. I am not the sort of gentleman to lose nights in other people's beds. I dedicate them to other pleasures, the murmur of a brush across linen, the miracle of color born from nothing, the discipline of pursuing a profile I respect too much to name aloud. When the sparrows announce the day, I extinguish the candles, close the paints, and carry with me the precise peace of one who has spent the night upon what he loves. The studio lies at the back, with tall windows facing west, and it smells of three things that never quarrel among themselves: linseed oil, stretched linen, and the old wood of the easel's table. Before crossing the threshold, I set aside my cane by habit, as if a stick might have a voice. Here, any extra voice disturbs. I have canvases shrouded in raw cloth, landscapes of the park, the tides at Blackwall, a scrap of sky stolen from Sussex, and far at the back, turned to the wall, the studies none shall see, profiles of a young lady, a bare shoulder turned toward the light, eyes glancing over it, loose strands held by a jeweled pin, the translucent blue embroidered in gold of her gown, the lips parted in the breath before a word. On another canvas, hands cradling beloved tulips, and other profiles of her captured without her suspicion. Sophia. I write the name here because, in this room, I may. The first spark came 2 years ago, one May afternoon. She was 17. The Duke of Grantham's garden seemed newly arranged by weary angels, and the young lady laughed. The laughter of a girl who already knows she is a woman, yet still addresses the world as you. To paint her that day would have been a grave fault. To love her, reckless, beautiful, and terribly desirable, yet still far too young. I made a vow that serves me to this day, to keep distance and respect until time itself was worthy. Sometimes, chivalry is not courtesy. It is the only language that forgives us when we grow old. Since then, I have painted what I could. White tulips in morning light, a glove abandoned upon a cushion, the curve of a shawl on an empty chair. There are no faces on these canvases, only traces. And traces, as I have learned in the chess of the heart, are not confessions. They are promises that do not yet know their grammar. This morning, after passing through Grantham House and being surprised by the flawless humor of the tulips, and by Lady Sophia's lightness as she walked among them, I wished to fix the morning before it vanished at noon. I opened the studio as one opens a burning letter. I uncovered a canvas reserved for a white background. I rubbed, with fair restraint, the mixture of oil and essence. I selected my least obedient white, flakes of zinc, which hold light without shouting, and a most restrained ochre for the shadow, beneath the petals. Whoever has attempted to paint a white tulip knows, one does not paint the white, one paints what white does with the light. And there was my task, to pursue what that color in her produces. A fine brush, a contour line, only enough to keep the margin, then a light mass, almost a breath. As London's light entered the windows with its usual modesty, I discovered something else. In painting the petals, I was learning Sophia's breath. Her white is not emptiness. It is the space where the chest decides, unwitnessed, that it may expand once more. Amid the half-mixed paints, I heard my own thoughts speak uninvited. Respect is my eroticism. I do not say this in salons, of course. But here, among cloths and wood, I admit that is what moves me. Not the urge to possess, but the hunger to draw near with honor, to deserve every inch her grace might grant. I painted 3 flowers. In the first, the beginning of a cold day. In the second, this morning in the garden. In the third, a noon yet to arrive. Between the three, a small glimpse of the iron bench, almost nothing, only to remind memory where to rest its hands should longing come sooner than the post. I closed my eyes a moment and let the studio tell me the hour of this Tuesday morning. I heard in the corridor my mother's step. Lady Agatha enters in such a way as to straighten even a crooked painting, and farther off the practical timbre of my brother, Conrad, Earl of Burwell, who speaks as one invests, swiftly, clearly with interest. Could I tell them what I paint? I could, but kindness also knows how to keep silence. My mother knows me well enough not to ask why certain afternoons find me reeking of turpentine. She prefers to ask whether I have eaten, which is another form of love. Conrad supposes any secret of mine must concern politics, and in part, is right. The domestic government of the heart is more work than Parliament entire. I returned to the canvas. In the left corner, a touch of green no botanist would claim. It is not botany. It is memory of Sophia's shawl fastened by a mother of pearl pin. The memory restored to me the garden's conversation, her laughter when I suggest titles for the flowers' court, the way she accepts an arm without needing it and yet likes it nearby. This is new in me. I have offered arms out of vanity, out of etiquette, out of instinct. With her, I offer it out of something I do not understand and do not wish to hasten. I wash the brush, dry it with a clean cloth, return. Light upon the petal's edge, not brilliance, breath, and a faintest shadow where the tulip meets the air, as if the air itself were tangible. I do not know if I shall ever show this canvas. I know that when I look at it, I grow less impatient for answers. It is the advantage of painting. Even doubt earns a frame. I put away the paints, turned the canvases to the wall, a habit that saves me from imprudence, and sat in the chair that creaks only to remind me I am alive. I am not a man of laments. I am one of planning. I make lists even of enthusiasms. Today's has 3 lines. 1. Keep pace beside Sophia without turning it into a manifesto. 2. Do not hasten the time she needs, however much my will demands. 3. Prepare a small study of tulips, on paper without pretension, to send her some morning with few words that commit nothing and yet say all, for clear days. Yes, I know. It is the gesture of a youth, and I am no longer so young. But there are ages the soul itself chooses, and today it chose the age of one who smiles alone in his own room. Before leaving, I checked the window's latch, washed my hands. Oil has the dreadful habit of betraying secrets. Put the key in the inner pocket of my coat and recovered my cane. In a friend's house, style demands its rituals. Crossing the corridor, my mother appeared, light, with that gaze that sees more than it confesses. Going to Grantham again? She asked, without a grain of judgment. I am. The Duke collects papers, I answered, and she smiled as if to say, and you collect something else. She did not ask what. Blessed are the mothers who save their questions. The carriage bore me through streets that already know my name, and I admitted, here, where none can hear me, a simple fear, not of scandal, nor of the future, but of hurrying the present. Sophia deserves time, and I, if I want her whole, must deserve the possible pace. There is another reason for waiting. I am not the heir. Conrad bears the earldom. I have been building my own house, and there is much to be done. Ravenwell expanded, warehouses raised, leases secured, discreet investments that allow me to promise without empty poetry. And there is Parliament. My seat demands prudence, and the Foreign Office already whispers I may be called abroad again. All of this requires calm and commitment. That is why I paint. Painting teaches me to wait without cooling. When I reached Grantham, the butler Danvers opened the door with that respect that is never excessive. His Grace in the study. Lady Sophia upstairs, embroidering with the Duchess. I nodded with my heart a half-tone higher and entered. Edmund rose. We clasped hands, laughed at a remark on Parliament, and soon the subject descended into the region where family caution resides. "They say that at Lady Atherton's ball a fortune hunter has been prowling," he remarked, pouring brandy. "Asking questions with the wrong nose, including about young ladies who concern me." I returned him, and "I understand that" required no adjectives. Then Edmund swirled the brandy, his eyes sharp behind the humor. "With regard to my sister, I am a civilized man, but I maintain a private agreement with Westminster Bridge." "Agreement?" I asked, smiling. "If any unworthy suitor comes to our door, I shall personally escort him to the bridge and let gravity settle the matter." We laughed, he with a brother's irony, I with the respect of one who understood the warning. I noted silently, "To be worthy is no option, it is requirement." We then turned to maps, sealed papers, and trade routes. But at the edge of thought, I sensed a familiar light, like the clear presence of a white tulip set by the window of the upper floor. Some things the body knows through its bones. And had anyone asked me there, amid dispatches and cartography, why I bore such precise a humor, I would have spoken the only truth fit for a gentleman who paints and calculates. There are days when the tulips open, the house speaks softly, and the world, mine included, turns back to its axis.
Thursday morning entered my room as if asking permission. Soft light through the curtains, fresh air, and for the first time in days, the clear sensation of having slept well. I lingered in that interval between pillow and world when Rose arrived, light as always, with her wooden brush and the vial of rose oil. "Good morning, milady. The sky has decided to be kind." I sat at the dressing table. She began to undo the knots with a friend's patience, a firm hand, a gentle touch, smoothing a strand here, pinning another there, doing the things only Rose knows how to do without one even noticing. Between one care and another, she placed a slim cardboard case tied with ribbon on the table. It arrived early through the servant's door. Mr. Ellery brought it, from Lord Pembroke. He said, to be delivered into her hands. For a second I was surprised. I expected nothing on a morning that already felt sufficient in itself, and curiosity triumphed over ceremony. I untied the ribbon carefully. Inside, a sketch. White tulips in clean lines, almost without paint. The paper's whiteness doing the work of the light. In the corner, 2 words, "For clear days," and a discreet E. Elegant, unnecessary for being so obvious. My heart gave that short step it sometimes does when something beautiful strikes in full. I held the paper against the window. The light passed through the drawn petals, and for an instant, I had the impression they were breathing. Rose smiled faintly in the mirror, as if approving of a well-chosen idea. My face warmed. Nothing scandalous, just a blush that asks no pardon. And I commented, trying to sound very rational. "He has a soul sensitive to flowers, it seems." Rose fastened the last pin, satisfied. "He does, and good messengers." I laughed, still gazing at the drawing. I was pleased by the kindness of my dear friend. She only nodded, proud of the place the paper had gained between wood and glass. A window within a window, a small promise of light for when the days call for tenderness. That week, the house seemed to breathe deeper. Edmund buried in maps and dispatches, Yelena with a soft glow in her eyes, and Danvers tuning schedules as if conducting a quartet. I was with Yelena in the drawing room, choosing vases, she always wins, when the butler announced, "Lord Pembroke." He entered as an old friend enters, humor in his eyes, measured step. "Grantham," he began, "I bring news that honors me and leaves me slightly uneasy. I have been assigned by the Crown to join a diplomatic and commercial mission. India and beyond." Before saying more, his eyes sought mine. A second, perhaps less. His eyes touched mine as if asking permission and promising return at once. My heart stumbled in that good way. I straightened the vase to disguise it. Then, he continued wholly into the subject. Ports, railways, science, customs. "We depart next week." Edmund closed the folder as one who separates duty from affection so as to wield both. He shook his friend's hand. I am honored, and less uneasy than you suppose, provided you return a decent partner at whist, and a sensible vote in committee. Do not leave me alone with Friday cigars. Edward smiled in that way that always amuses me. I shall send maps, bring contracts, and return to take your money on the first night of play. Keep my seat in Parliament and my glass at the club. How long away? My brother asked directly. About a year, if the monsoons cooperate and the ministers invent no new urgencies. I was about to offer tea, just to give my hands, something to do, when Edmund lifted his chin with that gleam of one who has learned to announce joy. Before you flee to distant lands, know that my household grows. Lady Yelena is with child. Joy came to me whole, though of course I already knew. But seeing my dear friend's happiness at the news warmed my heart, and behind it, a point of premature longing I dared not name. Edward leaned in, sincere, and the room grew a degree brighter. Then, before I leave, I ask leave to touch Grantham's treasure, he said, lightly placing his hand over Yelena's. Congratulations, Your Grace. I smiled, and he, as one who keeps a secret among friends, gave me another brief, steady glance that said without words, I shall return. My brother, who holds more steel than he admits, smiled without armor, radiant. And from now, dear friend, I impose a duty. You shall be godfather to my son, or daughter. Pembroke's laugh came easily, with the respect of one who grasps the weight of the invitation. I accept with honor, and with stories to tell the child shall have no peace. If it takes after the father, Yelena teased, it will have patience for them all. There was wine for the gentlemen, light, tea for us, and talk of the mission, the ship's route, the cities of call, what he would observe, contracts, ports, scientific and artistic exchanges, reports that teach politics without toppling delicacy. I listened with the attention of a diligent pupil, and when he mentioned up to 2 monsoon seasons, and remedies from there for chest colds, my heart, without leave, ran a step ahead. I did not understand. Perhaps it was merely the idea of distance, perhaps longing before its time. Later, after papers and Edmund's practical blessings, the garden demanded our presence, and we obeyed. Lord Edward and I walked along a path that knows my pauses. Rose followed at a distance, with that watchful eye that guards without prying. The lawn sparkled with dew, and the tulips performed their duty of calming any haste. I confess, I said, that I would like to see the world through the colors it chooses beyond our window. India seems to me a book with pages of fabric I cannot pronounce, Lord Pembroke. He laughed softly. Then I shall send you pages, Lady Sophia. I shall write to Grantham and fill your table with tales that smell of spice and road dust. And sketches, if it be no imposition. It is no imposition, I answered, and the smile came unbidden. I shall wait until my brother receives the letters to hear your stories. We walked 3 more steps. He stopped, not in my way, but beside me. If it be not improper, he said more quietly, I would also write to you. I would tell what the eyes learn when no one is watching. Lighter things, as my faithful valet Thomas Ellery says. I felt my enthusiasm flare, and at once the needle of decorum prick, warning of the edge. I think my eyes showed both at once. After all, a lady never corresponds with a gentleman to whom she is not betrothed. He understood. We shall do as is proper, he added kindly. Perhaps you do not know, but my valet corresponds with your maid. He smiled, awkward and conspiratorial. I might ask Thomas to add 1 more envelope inside his letters, to Rose. And within that envelope, I place my letter to you. Rose will deliver it at the right moment. The post will be of your trust, not mine, What say you?" "Rose would do it," I confirmed, laughing at the idea with the thrill of forbidden adventure. It seemed something out of a romance, and yet fit perfectly into the real world. "Then it is settled," he said, with that quiet contentment that makes no fuss. "I shall write as one who tries to capture on a page the beauty only your eyes discover. You may read when the afternoon asks for company." "And I shall answer when the afternoon returns me the time," I replied, wishing to sound sensible while joy, very much mine, beat its wings. He inclined his head, serious for a moment. "Promise me one thing, Lady Sophia." "Two, if they fit in a glove." "Take good care of yourself," he urged, with diligence and a touch of elegant disobedience. "I promise." "And I promise to count the flowers, not only those of India, also those you lend me when you look at the world." He lowered his voice, conspiratorial. "And since we speak of letters, if His Grace should catch us at this secret post, I fear he would summon me to a duel. I promise to win, with arguments." "With arguments, and a dessert spoon, if needed," I teased. "If any gentleman dared court you and stumbled upon our notes, he might find me on the other side of the lawn, civilly at his disposal." "That would be the least of the concerns, my lord," I laughed, shaking my head. "Harder would be explaining to the tulips why we plotted above their grass." He gave a hearty laugh, and quickly composed himself. "So, letters, flowers, and care. Shall we count breaths to seal it?" I asked playfully. 4 to enter. 4 to stay." He followed in the same tone. 4 to leave." "Promised." He left first, for men who depart must practice their farewells. "Until soon," he said without theatrics. "With letters," I added. "With letters," he confirmed, with that sweet gaze that alights and does not weigh. We returned indoors slowly. He went on with Edmund to more terms and maps. I remained with Yelena to discuss vases and little clothes that, being so small, make one gentler. That night, Rose drew the curtains and brought me the tulip sketch to bed. "Shall I leave it here?" "Leave it," I answered, "so we may breathe together." She extinguished the candle. I lay for a while, seeing with closed eyes colors I do not yet know, and felt, for the first time, a longing before its happening. It is not pain, not anxiety. It is as when one knows a good letter is already on its way, and the whole world chooses to fall silent, just to listen.
That morning, the studio was not a room, it was a pulse. I entered knowing that before following the sea, I needed to look at what remains. The canvases of Sophia, always turned to the wall, gentlemen with their backs in a musicless hall, kept their silent vigil. Today, by exception, I asked for a truce from my own ritual. I turned one around. The light from the window touched the linen, and the painting seemed to breathe. A suggested profile, the line of her neck as if morning had drawn her again, the stem of a white tulip brushing her hand. I did not paint the face. I painted the breath that precedes the smile. I stepped closer until I caught the discreet scent of dried oil. I touched the edge of the linen, not the paint. The gesture of one who longs to touch without harming. I closed my eyes and let the image complete what the brush dared not. The pergola, the lacework shadows on the ground, the white tulips opening a path, my forehead leaning to hers before the kiss, and then the kiss itself. Simple, clean, with the care of one who knows certain flowers demand slow hands. I opened my eyes slowly. I turned the canvas back to its place, to the wall, as if returning the gentleman to his position. I may depart, I told myself, because a part of me remains exactly where it should, guarding what it is not yet time to say. I opened the chest of materials with the tenderness given to an old correspondence box. I set aside graphite, quills, a small case of watercolors, 2 ivory-colored sketchbooks, a retouching chisel, my stubbornness, a small vial of essence. All this to speak of what does not fit in prose, I thought, smiling to myself. I knocked twice at the door. Thomas Ellery appeared, punctual, with the clean hands of one who respects ritual. "These go in the smaller trunk, Thomas. If the sea is kind, they shall arrive dry. If the sea is not, I shall dry them with my waistcoat, my lord," he said with the good-humored devotion that spares me from theatrics. "We do not need salted heroism. We need arrival." Arrival, then. He inclined his head and vanished down the corridor, already organizing the world. I went down for household farewells. My mother, Lady Agatha, had in her eyes that kind of blessing that does not weigh. She fastened a light scarf around my neck. "For when the air is too much of others," she said, "I shall return with stories that matter," I answered, kissing her hand. Conrad, my brother, did what he does best, combined duty with care and offered me a list of names who deserve attention and others who need only greetings. "You want me a diplomat and a taxidermist?" I teased. "I want you whole," he corrected, unashamed of tenderness, "and if possible, less thin. Take care, brother." The carriage had barely entered the courtyard when the Duke appeared, coat proper, humor sharp. We clasped hands as men seal an old contract. "So you go indeed, trading our sky for monsoons and spices," he said, iron polished into humor in his eyes. "I take your name in the papers and your laughter in reserve," I replied, "and I hope to return before your house doubles in size." Edmund drew from his inner pocket a smooth silver flask, discreet initials engraved. "For when protocol does not warm you, a Highland whiskey that Danvers guards as if it were a state secret." "I am grateful to both," I said, weighing. The metal as one receives camaraderie made liquid. He arched a brow, half laughing. "Should I worry about losing my friend to the dark-eyed ladies of Calcutta? You may sleep in peace. My heart is anchored in London, and I shall return in time to hold your child at the font," I said lightly, without fanfare. His eyes grew thoughtful for a second, a fine shadow over steel. Then he struck my shoulder with brotherhood. "Well then, make sure to return with both hands, one for the reports, the other for what cannot be written in them." The carriage rolled onto the street. On the way to the port, we were two men talking of work to shield what truly mattered. "Will you travel with a mixed mission?" "Commercial and cultural, ports, railways, museums, physicians. I wish to observe what teaches without delirium. And you shall send official reports for me to pretend to read with indifference, and you shall read them with the eyes of one who holds house and country in the same room. I know your zeal for official matters, dear Duke." The key was a catalogue of noise and salt. We climbed the gangway with the camaraderie of those already measured in what matters. Edmund's hand lingered on my shoulder, a half-second longer than etiquette permits. "Go, and return with material enough to weary me." "It shall be the papers that weary you," I promised. "The letters never." "Ah, the letter." He filed the phrase in a safe place. "I shall await news. My regards to Lady Grantham and Lady Sophia. Keep them safe." The Duke narrowed his eyes, thoughtful. "Ah, I shall certainly keep them safe, and deliver your regards. Safe voyage, brother." "Until soon, your grace." And I boarded. "Time afar learns other ways of being," said. In India, mornings smell of markets that rise before the bells. Afternoons, when it rains, seem filled with liquid music. Nights have a heat that peels away even the defenses we thought solid. I arrived, paid the necessary reverences, sat at table with men whose language I knew, and others whose tongue I learned by gesture. And when meetings went well, ports drawn with ruler and patience, a railway traced on maps that had never heard the rails, an exchange of library and museum that made me feel useful, I withdrew to the desk of the lodging house with the pen that had traveled with me. I wrote 2 letters in each sitting, the official one to Edmund with names, dates, contracts, what counts and what needs caution, and the other, which fit into a more intimate envelope. The first bore a seal, the second, a breath. "I send news and lights from distant lands," I wrote the first night, asking Rose by interposed hand, if the post was sound. I promised, Sophia, what a man may promise without breaking anything. Eyes. I shall try to capture on a page the flowers your gaze would understand better than mine. I sketched lotuses as if to explain serenity, jasmines that perfume corners before. They exist, hibiscus that know how to exaggerate without becoming indecent. Sometimes I sent only a line and a drawing. Other times, a tale of a rainy afternoon when children sold paper kites beneath the veranda of the physician who lent me books on chest colds. In the official letter, I noted for Edmund to show the family doctor, we have found prudent use of aromatic leaves in infusion, tulsi, holy basil with clear honey, sipped in small draughts, vapors with a small measure of camphor, gentle chest rub at night with mentholated oil. Here they swear it eases winter coughs. I recommend consideration. By the household physician. Not a prescription, but a bridge. There were also the days that remind us the body is foreign land. Malaria visited. First Thomas, then me. Poor Ellery raved with almost moving fervor. Milord, if I survive, I shall polish your boots until they glimpse the future. And if devotion remains, I shall name my first son Edward, even. If my future wife protests, he swore feverish, wrenching from me the first decent laugh in 2 days. You shall survive, Thomas, I assured him, sitting beside him like one standing guard over a soldier. And I shall be the boy's godfather, to prove my magnanimity. You shall, and bring a sweet from here so my mother forgives. The name, he murmured, falling asleep. When the fever claimed me, I discovered that certain faces sustain more than medicine. I recall asking for water, repeating the name of a flower without noticing, the physician said later, seeing through the curtains of illness, a gloved hand resting on the rail of a pergola, not truly there, but with me. Return whole, said, the voice I knew before I knew it. I returned, slowly, with the bitter taste of quinine in my mouth, and the stubbornness of one who had learned to breathe by sheer will. Sophia became, in those days, the kind of image that does not fade. When the eyes close, it was not delirium, it was direction. Recovered, I wrote Edmund, brief and honest. Fever attacks contained. We continue. Reports attached. Libraries opened. And on a separate sheet, I asked that the family doctor consider if he found reasonable the tulsi infusion and the gentle vapors in the cold weeks. To her I wrote something else. No illness, no heroics. Today the rain came broad and the stones of the street shone like a window. I drew a lotus thinking of your tulip. Both seem made to float. If your morning is brief, let this afternoon complete it. I drew the flower, sent it through Thomas, addressed to Rose. I felt sealing the envelope that clean jealousy that does not fear the world, only the post delayed. Weeks turned to months, and between one audience and another, the best part of the day was when Thomas returned from the post with her replies. I recognized London by the envelope. Cooler paper, a trace of lavender, certainly Rose's doing, and that handwriting that seems to walk in its own rhythm. Sophia spoke of clear days at the house, short walks in the garden, and with humor that disarms me, described splendid balls that sometimes end too splendidly to fit into real interest. She wrote of tulips, 2 new rows, the white ones heeded my prayers, of the jasmine bed Yelena insisted on teaching the climate, and how Edmund had improved in the secret art of holding infants. The Duke, imagine, learning humility from very small hands. I read slowly so the images would last. As one sips tea one does not wish to end. And there was what I had begged of heaven. News of her chest. The household doctor had graciously welcomed what I sent. Tulsi infusion in small sips, camphor vapors in measure, a touch of menthol oil before bed. On a frozen winter night, a crisis threatened. They followed the ritual, and the air opened. A path like an obedient curtain. Her letter that day bore less ink and more relief. We slept at last. On nights when the rain stretched the world, I learned the name of what moves me, desire with pulse and bridle. The way she holds a teacup so as not to make sound, the tranquil curve of her neck when she truly laughs, the sweet obstinacy with which she rescues a tulip from the wind. These are details that unfasten my discipline and push me gently toward the simple wish to hold her waist and ask for a kiss that fits both our breaths. I chose to want her thus, approaching without breaking, asking leave for every inch, preserving space for 2 breaths. Between reports and treaties, I sketched frangipanis in the margins, pressed dried leaves as markers, and wrote not as one sending news, but as one lighting a lamp at a distance. The rest I knew, the path would say better than I. When the orders to return arrived, I closed the paints as one closes a reliquary. Thomas, healthy again, and with his pride polished once more, lined up the trunks, checked the locks, and came, with the question that mattered. "My lord, and those letters? They remain light things, Thomas. In the right hands they travel like feathers. Rose will know the proper weight." The lad tried to hide a smile and failed with elegance. "Sometimes the feather returns, my lord, with flawless handwriting and the scent of lavender." I arched a brow. "Ah, then our discreet post has discovered the pleasure of reciprocity." "Indeed it has, my lord. If Miss Rose accepts my courtship, I believe we shall have no quarrels over the name of the first child." "Heavens, Thomas! Edward, my lord, in your honor, and she shall not be cross." I laughed aloud, for some exaggerations are only another form of loyalty. "I see you have thought of everything. The fever brings delirium, my lord, but also clarity. Cruel, yet didactic. Perfectly pedagogical, I would say." We laughed as 2 men who had crossed the swamp and found firm ground. I clapped his shoulder. "Then march, soldier of the post, letters to her, flowers to all, and your head steady." "Yes, my lord, and my heart. Where you left yours, anchored." In my notebook before sleep I wrote only 1 line. "I return with maps, reports, and a handful of flowers I learned so I may understand yours." Then I put out the candle. The night bore the warmth of a promise, and I, for the first time since I had left, slept as one sleeps who remembers the road home. Soon I would be back to see that beloved face.
London, 1853. The chapel smelled of fresh wax and old stone, with discreet white flowers, Yelena's choice, dividing the light as if the day itself had been polished to fit a baptism. The baby, William Harland, who one day would be the 5th Duke of Grantham, slept in his mother's arms with the air of one who had already been introduced to fortune. I arrived early with Rose, drew a deep breath to hold the moment, and stood among the front rows, adjusting gloves and feelings. That was when he entered. There was no fanfare. There was presence. Edward stepped beneath the arch of the door with that elegance that is never displayed, only inevitable. The sun from the vestibule touched his face, showing the skin slightly, darkened by the sun of travel and a shadow of beard that marked the jaw with an air of secret. My heart, without asking me, quickened by 2 beats. Nothing to betray me, but enough to know I was happier to see him than I had expected. He noticed me as one finds a page set aside and came, measuring the exact distance between the world and us 2. The bow was perfect. The kiss upon my hand, light, lingered the length of a good thought, and his gaze, his gaze, rested on me half a second longer than etiquette permits. "Lady Sophia," he said, as if my name filled his mouth with gentle things. I answered, "My lord," in a tone that belonged both to the chapel and to me. Edmund came with the humor of a brother keeping open skies. He granted us the grace of a greeting, and then placed us side by side, godmother and godfather, in a family architecture that felt both simple and sacred. The priest spoke of the name, William, promise of root, of the water that erases no one, only settles the dust of days. I held the child with Edward supporting my hand beneath the fabric, and the brush of gloves was a voiceless secret that lit something good in my chest. "He has the sleep of the just, and the future of the beloved," Edward murmured. And I smiled without turning my head, so the moment could remain whole where it was. The water touched the child's brow. I felt the house breathe. Not only Grantham House, but our house made of people. Edmund, eyes wetter than protocol allowed, gave thanks with an embrace that said everything without words. Afterward, there was tea in the great room. Danvers commanding trays like a general, Yelena with the glow one wears within when one is a mother, and Edward being what I most admire, present without taking too much space. Between one cup and another, as William passed from arm to arm and Rose offered me a handkerchief for my emotions, I saw Edward discreetly measure my breath, as one checks the health of a garden. It was mere care, but my chest widened by half a tone, as if learning again the music of air. I thought that some happinesses have invisible stitching. They arrive, settle, and leave us taller without anyone outside noticing. Some days later, a clear morning, Grantham House in the rhythm of a full home. I found Edmund in the hall, before the mirror, fixing his cravat with the disciplined haste of one who had just received a missive with a crest. Danvers waited with hat, cane, and coat, a figure of ceremony sharpened. "You are going out?" I asked, already guessing the rest by the knot of his brows. "Downing Street," my brother summed, turning the seal with 2 fingers. "Unplanned meeting with the Prime Minister." I made my face of sister creditor. "And the pie shop you owe me?" Edmund breathed a penitent laugh. "I owe 2 slices in a day for ourselves," he promised, already pulling on gloves. "I accept the debt with interest," I replied, half jesting. Edward had been in the room all along, speaking with Yelena about children's books and the improbable art of calming infants with Russian songs. And he turned at the word pies. "If His Grace permits," he said good-humoredly, "my afternoon is free. I can accompany Lady Sophia to that cathedral of butter and crust, and then a short turn through Hyde Park. Rose comes with us, as good sense requires." Edmund weighed his eyes between me and his friend, brother by blood, brother by choice, gauged my humor, he found laughter, measured Edward's firmness, he found cordial steel, and assented. "Short walks, coat at hand, no heroics." "I promise to obey your sensible side," I said, "and I promise to return her safe, sound, and a little happier," Edward added, offering me his arm as one offers an interlude. Yelena smiled. Little William sighed something I interpreted as approved, and Rose was already appearing with shawl, gloves, and that look that knows how to accompany without watching. In the carriage, the city leaned into shop windows as if listening to secrets. "Apple with cinnamon or salted caramel?" he asked. "The tulips always vote apple," I answered, and I respect the democracy of flowers. The pie shop smelled like a good afternoon. Edward let me choose my slice and ordered the same, claiming that godparents must at least agree on filling. Rose approved with the greedy silence of one who understands kitchens, while she ate a slice of lemon pie. Before we left the delicatessen, he ordered another slice for me to take home. "To eat before sleep and sweeten your dreams." I smiled, grateful. From there, we went to Hyde Park. The sun painted timid gold on the lake. The wind did its discreet service on the face. Edward adjusted his pace to mine. Twice, he caught the brim of my hat with the delicacy of one who asks leave before saving, a lady from seeming a sail in the wind. In the gesture, I smelled his cologne, bergamot, wood, and saw closely the bronze line the sun had left upon his face. A shadow of beard contended with the outline of his jaw, and I found in myself the quiet pleasure of noticing. "And the flowers there?" I ventured, to discipline my curiosity. "Some have learned to be sculptures without apology. Others are whispers, lotuses that float like good thoughts," he said. "I carried them with me, in memory, and on paper." "I received them," I confessed, remembering the sketches that now live between glass and wood upon my desk. He wished to know of the treatment. "Did the doctor receive the infusions and vapors?" "He did," I answered. "There was one difficult cold night, and it passed. I slept. Thank you. He held the part of the relief and changed the subject, as I like, not treating me as ill, not forgetting me. It was then that Lady Ashbury, with company, appeared out, of nowhere with the gift of entering wherever there is conversation. Lord Pembroke, London is more romantic when you return. He was impeccable. Lady Ashbury, London also educates me when I return. She asked about ports, about scandalous heat, about courage for seas, questions that are perfume, not hunger. And Edward replied with 5 polite, shallow sentences, which is the best way of saying almost nothing. I smiled with the patience I learned from Yelena, but something pricked me inside, a point of nameless unease, as if someone had touched the book I was reading slowly. I laughed at myself within. We are friends, I recited, as one takes medicine. He is handsome and kind, added the heart, posing as philosopher. What joy to see you, concluded Lady Ashbury, keeping possibilities in her eyes. All my respect, Edward returned. When she moved on, I turned my face toward the lake to steady my soul. Informed ladies make for entire interviews, he remarked, supple, perhaps to bring me back to us. Some questions demand short answers, I replied, and odd ones. Odd. So they make no pair with anything. He laughed. The breeze laughed with us. We spoke then of boys who fly kites in the rain, of Yelena and her talent for convincing tea to turn into medicine, of Edmund and his faith in the power of lists. Twice Edward offered his hand for a step in the path. Twice his glove brushed mine, not by accident, but by courtesy. And the skin beneath, the leather knew his warmth. I kept the knowledge as one keeps a marker between pages. We returned when the gold of the park turned to mother of pearl. At the portico, Rose thanked him with her eyes for the perfect rhythm of the walk. Clockwork steps, she whispered, and I wish to say that sometimes the clock marks something else. Edward left me at the door with the exact measure of the gesture. I have kept my word, he announced, teasing, safe, sound, and a little happier. You did, I confirmed. And you have earned credit with the godmother. He made a brief bow. His gaze rested on me half a second. Longer, a spark unnamed, and then, until soon, Lady Sophia. Until soon, my lord. I entered with the sensation of carrying a flower pressed between the pages of the day. Yelena awaited me with the scent of milk and tea. William sighed as if he approved of the world. Later, at my desk, one last slice of pie with Rose, I wrote, 2 lines I shall never send, only in my diary. There are returns that begin in a greeting and continue in a walk. If ever I forget, this sweet crumb will remind me it is possible to be light without being shallow. I extinguished the candle, smiling at myself, friends, and repeated the word until it fit the night. Months later, London dressed itself in autumn velvet and gold, and Mayfair lit its chandeliers as if the sky had been opened from within. They said it would be a memorable ball. Lord Pembroke had returned, after several months away personally, overseeing improvements on his northern estates, and I, who lately felt a step aside from time, watched the debutantes whirl with the light urgency of being 18 and having the whole future tied up with ribbon. I am 22, and that night, I noticed an unexpected tenderness in my gaze toward them. It was like watching a play that had once been mine, but whose script had shifted in tone. I sat in the corner with Lady Emmeline Hart, who speaks softly and laughs without tangling in her jewels. We spoke of flowers, a safe topic, and of an absurd hat we had seen that afternoon, an inevitable one. I was saying something about embroidery and late tulips when he entered. There was no announcement. There was gravity. The room straightened, half a centimeter. I saw him first in profile. Impeccable tailcoat, shoulders of a man who knows the weight of diplomacy, ship routes, and farm labor. His skin still marked by distant sun, the shadow of a beard sketching his jaw like charcoal. Happiness arrived quicker than I thought I was capable of. Emmeline touched my wrist. "Your friend has returned," she whispered, amused. "Our godfather has returned," I corrected, firmer than I felt. It didn't take long. Edward crossed the hall with a balance that did not ask pardon of the crowd. He stopped before me, bowed. The kiss upon my hand lasted the exact length of a good thought, and when his gaze rose to mine, it carried with it a memory of sunlight that was not England's. "Lady Sophia," he said, in the voice of a man who knows where he stands. "My lord," I replied, quite pleased not to stammer. "May I have this dance?" Emmeline shrugged with benevolence and handed me over with a smile that said, "Go." I went. Dancing with Edward has the gentleness of something that does not weigh. The hall yields a step, and for several measures there exist only 4 hands and a music that seems to recognize us. His hand on my back is not possession, it is care, firm enough to remind me the world has gravity, light enough to let me forget it for a moment. I smell the faint cologne, bergamot and wood, feel the warm nearness without a line being crossed, and catch myself counting breaths to hold the moment. 4 to enter, 4 to remain, 4 to leave. "You have returned well," I say, softly, letting the step lead us. "And does Ravenwell still have that copper sunset you described in your letters?" "It does, and the swirls of swallows still wheel above the barn," he answers, smiling with his eyes. "I painted 3 studies at dusk, sent them with Thomas to Rose. I received them, I confess, too happy to feign indifference. The watercolors of the heath, the violet shadow you left at the edges seems almost like wind trapped on paper. I tried to paint as I imagine you would see it," he says, simple, almost intimate. "And I found a rarity on the moor, white heather. I pressed a sprig between pages. When the time comes, it is yours." The image passed straight through me, dew like lace on morning webs, low mist on the marsh, the fine flight of a snipe. And in the midst of it, the pale sprig he had kept for me. "You brought me the world through your eyes," I thank him softly. Not to say so would be injustice to gratitude. "I only translated what your eyes already know how to read," he returns, as though it were obvious. I hesitated. Curiosity burned gently. "You seem to hold something back, but I do not understand why. Then you give it up." He smiled, without irony, a degree closer. "There will be time." The voice unshod haste. "There is something I have desired, for long, but—" The sentence lay in the air, whole yet unfinished. I must finish what I began. His gaze darkened a shade, not shadow but deep sea, intense, almost hypnotic. I felt uneasy, like finding a new step in familiar ground. My heart stumbled pleasantly. I thought I must be imagining it. I chose not to ask, and we continued until the last measure without hurry, as if the music itself, conspirator, saved the rest of the conversation for later. After the dance, we parted, with a bow that felt like promise, and, not to be imprudent, I let him move to greet others while I retreated to the side chairs. Lady Emmeline had gone, and in her place sat Lady Fairfax, who has a needle tongue and a ballroom smile. "My dear Lady Sophia," she began, honey in the tone and a pin at the tip. "I have delicious news. I am engaged to Lord Simon Harrington. I hope to see you at my wedding." I smiled sincerely. Happiness deserves applause. "I am very pleased." She smoothed her glove, satisfied with herself. "And you? When shall we see you courted? Time is kind, but it does not wait." The smile almost faltered. I held it. Time is a better gardener than matchmaker, my dear. It cultivates. Then, it chooses. She laughed, enjoying the answer more than she would admit. We shall see. And she left, leaving behind a sting that I, proud, treated with cold tea and posture. I sat straighter. Inside, a small sadness fluttered its wings. Perhaps this is indeed it. Friends. One day I shall see him court another. All very natural. I repeated the word 3 times until it fit in my throat. Natural. Still, I needed 2 minutes staring at the chandelier for my heart to smooth out.
To return to a ballroom after time in the country is like stepping into a score that someone tuned in your absence. It takes a moment to recognize the key. I recognized mine when I saw her. Sophia, seated at the corner with a friend, had an autumn light upon her face, the kind that makes things clear without shouting, and the tranquil line of her neck when she turned her head unsettled my discipline more than any storm. I asked her for the waltz because dancing is the most honest way to draw near, without breaking anything. When her hand came to mine, the hall fell silent within me. A light perfume, the metal of gloves, fabric brushing into music, and her long lashes marking the beat of my own time. I swear the world slowed down. I could say I thought of harbor politics or new libraries. I thought of her, my delicate flower, at the exact reach of my hands. I spoke little. I prefer to keep words, when closeness already says enough. But in the midst of conversation I left the truth. There is something I have wanted for long. Her eyes lit like a lamp. I stopped, not from fear, from respect. Finish the mission, I told myself. Return with both hands. Then yes. When we parted, I drifted into the masculine territory of glasses and greetings. Amid the protocol, I saw her alone, and a lady of easy barb setting her new happiness against my old nerve. Her happiness for others, the barb for the accounts of time. I did not hear the whole phrase, but I saw the small arrangement of muscles near her mouth, the one we make when swallowing something that scratches. My instinct was to go to her, but love is also knowing when not to cross the room. I stepped away until I was in a quieter corner. I stayed, closed my hand around the glass, and it was then Edmund arrived, not as Duke, but as brother. Already grown used to being back? He asked, pouring himself a little brandy. One learns quickly when one has reason to return, I replied. He followed my gaze. He always follows. And seeing it fall upon his sister, he set down the glass. Dear Pembroke, he began, firm and proper as a tide warning. I am good with maps. I know when a route is quietly being drawn. I swallowed a mouthful that almost went astray. He smiled with the corner of his mouth, like an eagle that does not announce flight. I have observed letters that arrive by capable hands and depart by the same. Unconventional post usually interests governments and elder brothers. I took the humor and left a trace of provocation. In that case, should I avoid the Sioux route by Westminster Bridge when I go to Parliament, just in case? Edmund arched a brow, amused. Fortunately, you are not an unworthy suitor. Otherwise, the Thames would solve the matter without records or speeches. We laughed. He with brotherly irony, I with the relief of one who understood the warning, and passed the inspection. Then I spoke without varnish. Grantham, I have done nothing indecorous. Nothing that would offend her honor nor shame you. No, my friend, and the my friend spoken was a title worth 3. You have done what is asked of decent men, used good messengers, written light things, and returned to a young lady. Better days. He drank a small sip and fixed me with a protective gaze. The question is another. What is your intention in corresponding in secret with my sister? Well, Grantham, we are not formally betrothed, as you know, and I wish to give her a part of me that was hers alone. That would console her in my absence without exposing Sophia's name to the treacherous London ballroom. Who knows? Perhaps thus I might cultivate the heart I hope to deserve when I return. What are your intentions? A whole life devoted by the vows of marriage. You know what you want, from what I see. Does she know your intentions? No. Without drapery. I have never opened my heart, and I will not before I return. I must depart again, friend, it's in service of the crown. The results demand continuation. I was informed just yesterday my return to India is necessary and urgent, and I will not leave a lady waiting on great words without being able to assure my return. Dangers exist, and hover close upon that voyage. As you must know, he nodded slowly, approving and testing at once, and then lowered his tone. There is another matter, Pembroke. My sister is a jewel, as you know. Mind, heart, grace, a true lady. But you know, and must know, that her health is more fragile than other young women's. There are limits she must live with. Do you understand? I understand Sophia's entire situation perfectly, I answered without hesitation. That has never weighed against her in my measure. My devotion to her admits no hindrance. His eyes examined me as one tests the strength of a bridge. She will require special care for life. Then I shall care for her with mine. She may not be able to give you children without risk. The shock and fear passed in both our eyes, his and mine, and it was said. I replied without faltering. Sophia is enough for me. I know each demand that life places upon her, and I commit to all. If duty were not tearing me from London, I would ask for her hand today. Edmund's chest released a nearly imperceptible breath, a brother's relief. And because relief and protection go hand in hand, he returned to the edge just to provoke me. The question is whether she will want you, Pembroke, he said, mocking. I have hope she will. Otherwise I shall retire to the heaths of Ravenwell, a hermit of irreparably broken heart, painting heather till the end of my solitary days. He laughed for real. Forbidden. To absent yourself from your godson's upbringing is not in the rules. Then I shall be forced to watch with the best good manners the godmother who rejected me, and resign myself. The laughter came clean. When it ebbed, it carried news. I have been blessed with fatherhood again, friend. Yelena is expecting once more. I touched his glass with mine. Light. Grantham House will need a new wing, and more lists. Congratulations, my friend. He smiled, satisfied, and returned to Steele. Go to India and return. And when you return, tell her. Until then, honor silence. Do not toy with subtext where what she deserves is spoken in her eyes. You have my word. And Edward. He leaned close enough for the threat to burn solemn. If I see waiting wound her, I shall cut your wings myself, gentlemen. I accept the risk, and the privilege of deserving it. I left him with the clear sense that the door is open, and the responsibility, mine. I looked again at Sophia, now with Lady Emmeline beside her, humor restored, and promised myself the only thing I can without breaking anything. I will return. Before the clock announced dawn, I asked her for a second dance, a cotillion, without pretension, and spoke what I could. I depart soon for India. The work succeeded. They ask for continuation. Her eyes darkened a shade, her smile faltered a second. Not of shadow, of sea. Then go, she said with a smile fit for a harbor, and bring new pages through the secret post. I will, I answered, and the near touch of gloves sealed the scene. In the carriage on the way home, I carried the scent of bergamot mingled with candle wax and the sound of strings doing what they do best when one must be patient, accompanying. I wished I had asked for her hand that night. I did not. I shall finish what I must, return with both hands. Then, yes, whole words, light lit, promise spoken where the world may hear. Until then, letters, and respect, which in me is the truest form of love. I like to call this second absence another tide. The water recedes to show the depths, and when it returns, it longs to bring something clean. India received me again with a heat that thinks slowly, scents that quarrel with each other, cardamom, and dust, jasmine and rusted rails, colors that do not ask permission. I moved from ports to workshops, from map rooms to hospitals, among papers that spoke of railways, tariffs, vaccines, and harvests. That night, my portable studio became my little chapel. Tulips that did not exist here, but rose up in memory, in spare studies sent back to London as if sending breath folded into an envelope. The letters grew more mature. I had learned to say, I feel with less ornament and more bone. And when I wrote to my godson's godmother, it was like lighting a lamp at a distance. I told of monsoons that tuned the rooftops, boys' kites carving gray skies, banyan trees embracing their own shadows, Hindu doctors teaching me simple ways to persuade air to open the chest. There was longing, yes, but disciplined, the kind that waits quietly because it has chosen to. I am not a man of spectacles with the heart. I kept myself for her with the same precision with which, standing before a canvas, I decide where the light must end, and each word I left unwritten was itself a promise to return with both hands. Thomas Ellery, during this time, discovered that love also crosses oceans. "My lord, Curry haunts my dreams," he would complain heroically, wiping his brow with a handkerchief that never won the battle. "And the rains, my lord, they last longer than a bishop's sermon." I returned him his teacup in calm. "The monsoon teaches patience," he sighed. "Miss Rose teaches better." On certain mornings, we reviewed together our small stock of devotions. My watercolors of tulips in short strokes, dedicated to her. His letters, which began as polite company and ended as courtship. Handwriting neat, modesty I envied. "If I survive one more fever, I'll marry," he declared one day, half serious. "And as previously agreed, I'll name the first Edward, with my wife's pardon," I laughed. "We'll see if Rose tolerates such audacity." "She will," he answered, blushing as only a man does who already has his answer. We were two men in love in a foreign land, he suffering from his stomach and his heart, I only from my heart, and that was enough. At the table I refused easy. Invitations and empty laurels, I do not stray from what matters. When, 6 months away from home, the work stretched the calendar, and the Crown demanded 2 more years to close treaties, complete inspections, and lay out a shipping route that needed to be borne correctly, I accepted, resigned. I swallowed. The urgency to return and transformed longing into action. I tightened reports, closed leases, purchased, through my solicitor, 2 lots adjacent to Ravenwell, negotiated warehouses and rails. If I could not run to Sophia yet, at least I could prepare the ground where she would walk safely. So I painted more, wrote better, short sentences she could read without strain, and kept my desire as one lines a box for the right gift. Fine. Cloth, precise folds, her name hidden inside. How I longed for her. The days sped by and every rainy afternoon became an invitation to write. Today, the herons landed near the tracks. The river seemed to take a liking to me. I met an apothecary who boils leaves as though he were praying. I send notes to the doctor back home. The marigolds crown the temple doors. They look like little suns in a row. When my health tested me with a fever that leveled me for days, Thomas kept vigil, raving about English stew pots and love letters. I, in the heat and the chill, clung in my mind to 3 things. Her voice saying, "Thank you," the small hand of my godson, William's hand at his christening, and the imagined fragrance of tea with honey always hovering around Sophia. The fever broke, and when it did, the will to return was no longer just a decision. It became direction. There was still work, yes. Signatures require the right ink. But at night, facing the canvas, I repeated in my own way, "One more study, one, bless ocean," and I wrote the last line like one closing a map. I keep the best in silence to say it face to face.
The days had learned to be good to me. Not all, but more than before. The attacks still appear, smaller and more polite. They announce themselves in my throat. I sit, steady my breath. Rose opens the window. On the right side of the wind, Nadia arrives with the infusion Yelena swore to both Russia and England, and almost always, the night grants us sleep. The body, therefore, has grown lighter. The heart does not always follow. I discovered this alone, one morning when no remedy was missing, and still, the longing hurt as if I had climbed too many stairs. It hurt for Edward, for the eyes that listen, the humor that saves, the gestures that never weigh me down. I thought I could be happy alone. In truth, I know how to be. But there is a little mischief that came to live beneath my ribs and answers to a name that delays in being admitted. Love. I don't know when it began. Perhaps at William's christening, perhaps at Hyde Park, perhaps with the first watercolor of tulips that arrived folded like light inside an envelope. I only know that months turned into years, and the ladies my age married, learned the path to the nursery, exchanged invitations and congratulations, and I, who celebrate each one, sometimes return to my room with a long silence, as though closing the door to better hear what I feel. There was one afternoon, especially, when the house was full of joy. William and Elizabeth inventing stories in the parlor, Yelena laughing with Nadia at the toy piano, Edmund rocking little Henry with a low song, and I, precisely for loving all of it, had to retreat to my room to cry. Not a noisy cry, a woman's cry, hidden in a handkerchief, accusing no one, simply acknowledging the future I desired as one acknowledges a window that may never open. And if no one ever wants me whole, and if I never fit into the portrait of a family of my own? Rose noticed. She always notices, and came in without intruding, adjusted my shawl, fetched a small glass of water, and said the way she says things when the words need to fit. "It will pass, milady. Everything true always passes to a better place." I nodded, pressed my face into the cloth, and stayed quiet until the afternoon leveled out. Later, I came back down. The house felt alive in a way that made me better. William argued earnestly over which wooden horse ran faster. Elizabeth adorned her dolls with ribbons and stories. Her favorite is named Tulip, of course. Yelena had the scent of milk and triumph in her eyes, and Edmund, my brother, was the very image of a man made happy with a baby in his arms. I smiled for them all, as though signing my name under their joy, and went to the garden to see the butterflies. I have always held a deep respect for them, for they remind me that everything can change shape without losing what it is. There, in the quietest part of the flower bed, I cried again, short, a minute, 2 breaths, not from lack, but from excess, of love, of longing, of courage. When the tears dried, I did what I always do to straighten my soul. I drew from the lining of my dress the card I keep as a relic, a white tulip, signed with a tiny E. And I asked the paper, which never answers, "Where are you now, Edward?" These past months, the letters had taken longer. I have learned that the world has capricious roads, and that not every delay is forgetfulness. Still, when a whole week went by without word, I caught myself alone at the window, repeating like prayer, "He has not forgotten me," and it was precisely in the garden, with the low sun and butterflies visiting the lavender, that Rose appeared along the gravel path, her step familiar, her eyes bright before the conspiratorial whisper, "Milady, a letter from Lord Pembroke." She extended an envelope dusted with road. My chest gave that good stumble, and when I opened it, I read what I needed. Edward would soon embark. I stayed a long while with the letter open in my lap, as though taking sunlight into myself. Inside the house, William and Elizabeth laughed. At some discovery, Henry answered with a baby's sigh. Yelena called supper. Edmund's voice played at being a ship's captain to lead the little parade. And I, sitting among tulips and butterflies, once again relearned how to breathe in the right measure. 4 to draw in, 4 to hold, 4 to release. He is coming. Back. Until then, I will tend to the body, to the house, to the card in my lining, and keep love quiet in the place where it was born, discreet, true, time-proof.
I arrived at Grantham House on an afternoon polished to fit into memory. Clear sky, discreet wind in the treetops, the facade as familiar as a face one loves even before seeing again. Danvers opened the door with that respect which doesn't announce itself. It simply exists. "My lord, welcome home." There were children's voices deeper inside. William's laughter, Elizabeth's invented chatter, Henry's babbling. And in the vestibule, two possible directions: family in the garden, and the conversation I needed before any other. Stepped into the library still carrying travel's weariness mingled with cologne. Trunks left at home, a quick bath, and I came straight here. Edmund received me standing, one of those short embraces between men that says much without speech. "Welcome back, Edward." He poured brandy into 2 glasses. "We have missed you." "I am here for one reason alone," I was clear. "I wish to ask for Sophia's hand." He nodded, serious, and then dropped the salt where it stings. "Before that, I must warn you. Sophia has received a proposal of courtship." The glass warmed in my hand. "From whom?" "Lord Hawley, the widower from the Highlands. He is a well-regarded man." Jealousy rose in me, hot and quiet, like a fever with no warning. I stood mute for a full minute, and he observed me, with the calm of one who measures a tide. When I breathed properly again, the words came rough. "Knowing my intentions, you still permitted this absurdity. A gentleman who dwells atop stone and wind. The climate would wound her gravely. I cannot believe this, Grantham. I told you. I would return to ask for her hand." He set down his glass, his face marble. "You never declared matrimonial intentions to her as far as I know, and my sister deserves to know she is the object of esteem. Options exist, do they not?" "Options?" Lord Alexander Thorncroft also expressed serious interest some 2 weeks past. Sweat prickled at my nape. "Is there yet another suitor hidden beneath the carpet?" He smiled. "Wrong question." I breathed deep. "Then the right one is, did you grant anyone permission to court her? Is she with any gentleman now?" Edmund held my gaze for a long second, then gravity yielded a degree. "There was no need to deny anyone. My sister gave no chance to any of them. I have wondered whether there is already someone in her heart, enough to refuse such offers so swiftly." His smile came mocking. I faced him, relieved and anxious at once. "Do not jest with me. I was on the verge of either declaring myself or abducting the lady to Ravenwell, far from London's covetous eyes." He burst into laughter. "From what I know of you, the first choice is the more honorable. But I understand the urgency of the second. I recognize a heart both in love and mistreated by waiting. You have my blessing to court her, my friend. Now it is yours to win her, or to enter the role of those rejected by the most sought-after lady of the month. I confess, I am curious to see the outcome." "Thank you, Edmund." He came near and clasped my shoulder. Exact weight, old friendship. "Then return to the garden and say it." I smiled, both relieved and wary, and he, with humor steady as a harbor, added, "Do so before Ambassador Vladimir decides to turn the sunset into a congress." Indeed, the ambassador was there on visit, speaking with an English secretary on the veranda about ports and books. I glimpsed in passing the pleased gleam of one who knows that marriages sometimes open routes treaties cannot. I crossed the great hall. Yelena waved with Henry in her arms. Nadia passed carrying ribbons. I, who for years had saved myself for this minute, asked Danvers for the shortest path to the white tulips. And there she was. Lovely, my sweet Sophia, health glowing in the bloom of her cheeks, that new maturity refining her humor and deepening, her gaze guiding William as he tried to name a butterfly in the flower bed. I stood 2 steps away, stealing nothing of the moment, for long minutes. And when she saw me, her smile was calm and whole, her eyes shining with something new. Enough to throw my heart off its rhythm, and then return it to its rightful beat. "You are back," she said, simple, and her simplicity always disarms me. "I am," I answered. and I brought what was missing. She raised a brow, teasing at guessing. I bent down and greeted my godson with an affectionate embrace, noting how much he had grown in these 2.5 years. Then I asked Sophia for her arm with courtesy. Rose gathered William and remained at a distance that watched without watching. Among the white tulips and the lawn where Edmund lifted Elizabeth onto his shoulders while Yelena laughed with Henry in her arms, we took the gravel path to the more sheltered part of the garden, beneath the pergola laced with vines where children's laughter arrived only in soft echoes. When the house was at its proper distance and privacy was ours by right, I was the first to break the silence, unhurried, as one who places respect before words. The love of those two is admirable, Sophia. To see Grantham and his Duchess is nearly a lesson, and I, if you will allow me, desire more than anything to show you that you too can be loved in that way, wholly, under the eyes and hands of the right man. She lost a breath, not for lack of air, but for recognizing in my eyes the grown flame I had kept for years. The smile she gave me carried both awareness and sweetness. It was a smile that knew what it was doing. We stood a few steps side by side on the gravel path before a bed of flowers. The light fell golden on the petals, giving her skin a blush that cannot be invented. I spoke like a man opening a case long kept. Lady Sophia, there are things a man must only say when he can stay to hear the answer. That is why I was silent. Forgive me the time of silence and absence. Duty took me far, but you never left me for a second. I painted what I imagined your eyes would see, wrote as though lighting a lamp for your reading, worked as though preparing a home for the right person. I love you and have loved you since you were 17 and laughed near the flowers. Light is something the wind carries without wounding. I knew then, and I kept it, out of respect for waiting the right moment, for wanting to arrive whole. Edward. My name in her mouth came with a care that unarmed me. I feared to say it and then have to depart. I feared to leave great words with an ocean in between. Now that I have returned, I ask, let me prove what the letters could never. I want your life as it is. I want to tend what requires tending, learn your rhythm, celebrate each clear day, and hold the night when it grows heavier. If you do not want me, I understand. I will obey silence. But if there is a place for me, I remain. I remain and paint the winters, count the tulips, and make of the air a home for your peace. She trembled, not from weakness but from an excess of feeling, her eyes filled with tears with the delicacy of dew inventing weight on a petal. I thought I was alone in this, she confessed, laughing and crying at once. I am happy with all that I have, but you were as necessary to me as air. I read your letters until I knew them by heart. There were days when I kissed the edges of the paper as one kisses hands in secret. I thought it foolish. It was not. I stepped closer, 2 breaths fitting into the same space. I lifted her gloved hand to my lips, a kiss of promise. Forgive me for not saying it sooner. You said it now, I hear it. I knelt, not from protocol but from truth. The gravel accepted my weight without protest. Behind us, the world continued. Vladimir spoke with an English secretary about books and ports. The children invented a short song, and right before us the tulips glowed with the exact color of a beginning. Lady Sophia Harland, I said, plain and unadorned, I love you so dearly. Would you grant me the honor of becoming my wife? The silence that followed carried color and warmth. The green of the garden, the gold of late afternoon, the gentle heat of her hand when she slipped off her glove and touched my face. Yes, and the yes came with a laugh that felt like the first day after winter. I rose slowly, a man carrying a world without letting it fall, and kissed her. First her forehead, in gratitude, then her cheek lightly, then her lips, chaste and whole, enough for the soul to understand without the household needing to see. Her eyes found mine and stayed, things aligned within us, just like that. We lingered close, breathing the same air until she very softly, almost a secret, let slip, I dreamed of this, for so long. I smiled, not from triumph but relief. I brushed my lips over the corners of her eyes, the tip of her nose, the place where her dimple appeared when she laughed. I held on to this moment as one clings to map and compass, I confessed. When the world was too far, I closed my eyes and brought you near. The way you lift your chin when curious, the way you touch petals as though asking permission. The tulips always in odd numbers, your scent of sweet tea with old books, your gentleness and kindness, your delicate strength that makes you stronger than steel, your perfumed hair, and your eyes, which are my private universe. That is how I stayed whole. She blushed, beautiful, and lost her breath for a moment, not from fear but from joy that pressed the chest. My dear and sweet Sophia. I kissed her hands then, one and the other, as if sealing a vow. Every detail of you disarms me, Sophia. The light on your face when you speak of the children, the patience with the flowers, the silent courage, all of it is what I wish to care for every day. And I want you, she said, simple, certain, here. We stayed there for a span the clock could not measure. When the house called us, William shouting "Aunt," Elizabeth with a little peanut, Henry sighing his answer, I handed her a small case. Heather under a copper sky, my watercolor of the north, on the back, the line that had carried me through seas and seasons. For your clear days. It is our first open canvas, I joked, my voice already lighter, the first after the yes. We shall open it together, she said, with a certainty. That set my course straight. Returning to the veranda, Edmund intercepted me midway down the path. His handshake was firm, his embrace short and whole. Well then, he said with the smile he always tries and fails to hide, now go tell it inside, with everyone. Then we'll speak of dates. Yes, brother. And I went, carrying with me the scent of bergamot, the good sound of footsteps on wood, and a promise that at last no longer had to wait. I had stayed. And when I kissed her again, brief, certain, I had the clear impression that even the treaties behind us had asked leave to watch us pass.
The carriage halted before Pembroke House like a heart coming to rest at an old harbor. I alighted beside Edmund and Yelena, a pre-engagement night that already felt like celebration, and the facade, with its Corinthian columns and gas, lanterns, carried the clean perfume of orange blossoms and a light rain upon warm stone. Inside, the house did not hide what it was. Wealth clothed in good manners, Savonnerie carpets that made no apology for their beauty, damask on walls that knew when to stop, crystal breathing light beneath a chandelier of drops, silver without ostentation, ancient wood polished with wax and history. What struck most, however, were the eyes of those who lived here, educated, polished, carrying that firm sweetness that turns luxury into welcome. Lady Agatha, the widowed countess, received us already in the vestibule, wrapped in a shawl of dark silk and a smile that seemed to bridge families and transform them into a single hall. "My dear Sophia," she said, taking my gloved hands delicately. "I awaited you, as one awaits spring." The clasp was motherly. I felt warmth reach my eyes before it touched my face. "My lady," I managed, "you bring me more than flowers. You bring me home." She smiled, with a brightness I had thought reserved for family portraits. "And I receive you as a daughter." Edward's elder brother, Conrad the Earl, impeccable in his cravat, inclined with restrained humor. "Lady Sophia, if my brother speaks of tulips once more, I shall close the library for the kingdom's rest. Then I shall reserve the subject for the garden," I replied, and Yelena's light laughter rang like an affectionate bell. Edmund pressed his friend's shoulder, conspiratorial. "Only be sure the two of you do not turn the flower beds into a state treaty." "A treaty I would sign," Edward answered, appearing from the drawing room, "so long as it is written on watercolor paper." That was when our eyes met. He carried the discreet scent of bergamot and wood. At the corners, clear humor. At the center, something warm and steady I recognized as my home. There was no grand gesture, only the quick brush of his glove against mine, the brief lowering of his face, and the kiss he pressed into the air above my skin, as the century commanded. Yet I felt it as though it touched me. My body responded with a soft flush, and in a tiny fold of the instant, I smiled. "Welcome, Sophia," he said, his voice with the cadence of one who smooths a table free of dust before serving the finest. "Thank you for receiving me," I answered. I looked and kept in memory the line of his jaw, the gentle shadow of beard at evening's end, that gaze which seems to listen before it speaks. Dinner was set in cream china trimmed with gold, cutlery heavy in the right measure, low arrangements of white tulips, of course, tall candles lending warm light to every face. Lady Agatha presided with the calm governance of one who has seen 3 winters and chosen to be spring. To her left, Edmund. To her right, Yelena. Edward beside me, as the occasion required. There was consommé to begin, fragrant, honest, then salmon with dill sauce, and a roast that conversed with the wine without quarreling. We spoke of Ravenwell, harvests, tenants, the newly reinforced bridge, of Grantham House, William's mischiefs, Elizabeth's musical ear, Henry's sigh when he sleeps in arms. Lady Agatha listened to me as few women listen to another, without pity, with attention. "Your voice is firm, my dear," she said, without imposing. Firm and sweet is a combination that makes women endure. I felt the phrase wrap around me like a shawl that warms without weight. Edward, beside me, left his hand a palm's width from my plate, almost touching the fold of cloth that brushed my wrist. It was not contact, it was nearness. And my pulse understood it as low music. At times, when all laughed at one of Edmund's remarks or Yelena's inventive images, I looked, and was being looked at. The kind of gaze that admires without measuring, desires without demanding, promises without speaking loudly. The entire dinner became breath. In, the shine of crystal. Stay, the sound of voices I love. Out, the certainty that life sometimes finds its rhythm. In the toast, Lady Agatha lifted her glass, and the crystal replied with that chime which always seems a beginning. To the Grantham family, so dear to us, and to my Sophia, yes, who arrives not as a guest, but as a root. I could not resist. I went to her and received a mother's kiss upon my temple. Thank you. Lady Agatha. My voice failed in the right place. I promise flowers and care and laughter, Yelena added, smiling with a sister's eyes. And biblical patience with artists, the Earl teased, making Edward raise his hands in surrender. Guilty, but with extenuating circumstances, he murmured, bending just enough at my ear for my skin to understand. Breathe with me? I obeyed the game that is only ours. 4 to enter, 4 to stay, 4 to leave. And the smile came natural, conspiratorial. While dessert, a lemon cream with zest, sweet at the right point, was served, Lady Agatha discreetly slipped me a thin envelope with an old seal. From my grandmother's house, for the woman my son has chosen, she said. Inside, a small card with engraved flowers and a simple verse. What is loved grows. I felt my heart perform exactly that movement, grow without bursting. Edward noticed. Of course he noticed, and with his eyes alone said, I am here. I answered with mine. I know. After coffee, Edward excused himself to the family. I should like to show you something special, he said, in a tone that in him is the twin of courage. A beautiful timidity that only appears when he is about to reveal what truly matters. Behind us, I heard Edmund and Yelena speaking with Lady Agatha, 3 good souls, arranging happiness together. and I followed him down a quieter corridor of polished oak panels, where our steps tamed the anxiety. Ahead stood the door of the atelier. My heart made room. The night was ours. The door itself was simple. Behind it, a world. The scent of linen and oil, a thread of turpentine almost sweet. Chalk dust floating like sunlight turned to powder. The light came from the side, that light that does not shout, he once described in a letter, clear, enough to reveal texture, soft enough not to steal the subject. On an easel, Ravenwell in a damp morning. On another wall, flowers and studies of breath. And leaning nearby, many canvases covered in plain cloth, secrets waiting for their hour. "May I?" I asked, hand already on the cloth. He nodded, but his body betrayed him. He held his breath, clasped his fingers behind his back, like a man restraining himself from touching his own exposed nerve. A small, vulnerable smile lit the corner of his mouth. I drew back the cloth gently and found myself. On the first canvas, I appeared with loose, dark waves, cheeks flushed from laughter, an ivory lace gown, and in my arms a bundle of white tulips, petals glazed like wax, stems damp as morning. The light caressed shoulder and mouth's curve, the warm background making it seem the flowers breathed with me. In another, I was seated, body bent in quiet reverie. The gown of tulle and tiny embroideries shimmered as if each stitch held a story. My hand rose to my chin in an intimate, feminine gesture, and my eyes lowered. Not from sadness, but from listening. In the third, my profile. A loose bun with strands escaping, a dark gown, and behind me a sky of blue-green strokes, broad and alive, as if the air itself had texture. The colors were restrained, the brush patient, and here and there showed the painter's confession. The thumbprint at the corner, the raw edge of canvas visible, reminding me that truth also has a backstage. "Edward." "It is beautiful," I whispered. The voice took the shortest path from chest to lips. "I never knew anyone saw me this way." He stepped closer, warm, fragrant of bergamot and wood. "I paint as I think you feel," he said simply. "If I erred, it was in trying to match your breath." A half smile, almost boyish. "Showing them costs me. But I owe you truth." I pulled back another cloth, and for a moment lost all words. There I was, not the me of salons, but the one almost no one sees. The serene profile, the heavy lashes as they fall in thought, the white tulip held close like a secret. I felt someone had seen me inside, and when I lifted my eyes to Edward, I found the same woman reflected there, loving, whole, unhurried. Sweet joy tightened my chest. The tear came of its own will, warm against my cheek. He caught it lightly, with his thumb, and raised it to his lips as if in thanks. I closed my eyes at the touch. My body recognized home. "You are so beautiful, my love." His voice came low, grave, certain. "You live in every one of my finest and most passionate thoughts. I wanted you to know. You have always been my only." The world slowed. I opened my eyes slowly, feeling the blush rise in my cheeks. "Then, let me say as well," I began, timid but sure. "You are the only one to dwell in mine. The last name I think before sleep, the first upon waking, and the one that follows me with every breath." He closed some of the distance. Not enough to startle me, only so that I could hear his breath touch mine, and smiled in that guarded way. "Say more," he asked, without demanding. "I thought of you," I confessed at last, blushing again. "Much, these past years, and I wrote of you in my diary." Joy rose in him like sun from behind a cloud. "And what did you write?" "A lady does not reveal her secrets, my lord." "Injustice," He laughed, eyes alight. After you've made me landscape and flower, I deserve at least one line. Perhaps, I teased, sly and shy. One or two phrases from the less indecorous parts. The air shifted a degree. Edward gasped in surprise, not scandalized, but alive, utterly masculine, and drew me into an embrace that was home, warm, close without impropriety, long enough to hold a lifetime. Edward, I murmured, laughing, flushed. Do not be shy. His voice low at my temple. He kissed hair, then brow, then corner of lips. It is only an embrace. I long so much to hold you, Sophia. I adore your scent. His fingers found a rebellious strand of hair and tucked it gently behind my ear. Poetry made flesh. Soon you shall be my wife, he said, looking into me without intrusion. Accept my caresses while we are far from vigilant eyes. I giggled conspiratorially and slipped off my glove slowly, like unfolding a beautiful letter. Then receive mine, I answered, laying my bare hand on his jaw, feeling the texture of freshly shaven skin, the warmth, the life beneath my fingertips. Edward closed his eyes a moment, breathed as one arriving home, and murmured, Tell me one more line from the diary. I wrote that. When you return and look at me, my chest forgets it ever hurt. He held his breath, as if safeguarding treasure. I love you so much, he whispered, lips a breath from mine. Since your first laugh among the flowers, and I love you, Edward Pembroke, I returned, and the words felt as certain as a name. We lingered there, his weight leaning into me, my fingers tracing his face. Between kisses, cheek, lips, hands, he wove those simple things most never say for fear of sounding small. I love how you think before you speak, how you tilt your head when you disagree sweetly, how you protect children, how you touch flowers as though asking leave, how you make the world more beautiful just by being in it. The kiss that followed was calm and whole. First the tip of my nose, half in jest, then my lips, slow, deep just enough for the heart to lose its step, and then find a new rhythm. When breath stumbled, he smiled against my mouth. Joy and nerves stole my air, and he leaned his forehead to mine, guiding. Breathe with me. 4 in, 4 to hold, 4 to release, I finished, smiling, happy obedience. Just so, my love. When my breath was steady again, he led me before another canvas, a white tulip painted so close the petal seemed like a napkin, of light. It is yours, he said. I want it to hang where you dress each morning, a reminder, the day may be bright, even when it enters softly. And this, I opened a small case upon the table, is mine for you. Inside lay a bookmark I had embroidered with green threads and a small E hidden on the reverse. For the books you will yet write me in letters, I teased. He laughed in that way that mends weeks. Injustice reversed. Now I carry your secret in cloth. When we returned to the hall, Lady Agatha held a small box in her hands. It belonged to my mother, she said, offering a matte gold cameo with a flower engraved. I place it in the hands of my daughters-in-law when my heart gives leave. Conrad, Edward's elder brother, made a ceremonial bow and, with humor easing the cravat, announced, I have warned the chaplain to reserve half an hour extra on the wedding day. The Pembrokes weep at ceremonies. We all laughed, I most of all. Before we departed, Edward took my shawl, arranged it upon my shoulders like a man learning music, and whispered at that place where the ear brushes the neck. Thank you for coming. Thank you for accepting me. And thank you for seeing me, as no one ever has, I replied. At the door, Lady Agatha kissed my brow. Rose exchanged a conspiratorial glance with Thomas Ellery, who had appeared with a tray. Love also runs the servants' corridors, and I wish luck to all who find it. In the carriage home, I held the cameo, the bookmark, the warmth of his hands, still in mine, and thought that if the world makes noise tomorrow, within me there will remain a silent place where Edward's voice is kept, 4 to enter, 4 to hold, 4 to release, and above all, to stay.
It was a wedding just as I had always wished for us, discreet and luminous. At St. George's Church, white tulips and ivy traced a corridor of perfumed air. I saw Yelena wipe away a tear with a smile, felt Edmund grow larger inside as he gave away his sister, and my mother, Lady Agatha, received Sophia as one welcomes a daughter long owed by life. There was no excess, only music, vows, joined hands, and that yes that seemed to belong naturally to the world. After a small reception among our dearest, we left as though protecting a treasure from the noise. We departed for Ravenwell. The road was serene, with a quiet overnight at an inn without pretense. Thomas and Rose followed close behind, vigilant. The request had been hers, and the joy mine. The wedding night would take place only at home, on the land I had been, preparing, expanding, and dreaming of to receive her. At sunset, Ravenwell unfolded in honey-colored light. The servants bowed with sincere welcome. I told Sophia, "I promise I shall make you the happiest of women. Here in this place I have prepared for you, my love." Our trunks were taken up. I ordered a warm bath to be drawn for her, and suggested a moment of rest before a light supper. Nothing lingered beyond its measure. Everything felt, at last, in its rightful place, especially the two of us.
After dinner, Rose helped me remove the hairpins, combing through my hair with the patience only old friends possess. "Breathe beautifully, milady," she whispered, adjusting the French lace that embraced me like a soft breeze. The mirror reflected a blush I knew well, joy laced with a thread of nerves. When she left, the room fell into the quiet hum of candlelight. I heard footsteps. The door opened gently. Edward entered, his collar undone, his gaze calm yet alive. He stopped, for a moment, as one who stands before an altar. "My wife," he said simply, and the word covered me more completely than any fabric could. He approached with the peace of a man returning home after a long journey. The first kiss landed on my forehead, gratitude. The second, at my temple, a promise. The third, on my lips, tenderness. The world seemed to hush until it fit the rhythm of our breathing. He whispered in my ear, "If something displeases you, tell me." And that care kindled something deeper than nervousness, trust. That night was neither hurried nor restless discovery. It was a calm surrender, a prayer made of gestures. Between quiet laughter and small words, time seemed to stop. Nothing in us was haste or possession. It was the meeting of two souls finally fluent in the same language.
There was beauty in everything about her, but what undid me was her trust. The way she looked at me, unguarded, as if saying, "I am here, and I am ready," in the same breath. I touched her face as one unveiling a long-dreamed painting, and in her eyes I saw the reflection of everything I had sought without knowing its name. "I'm mad about you, Sophia," I confessed, and the words seemed to come alive between us. She smiled, a smile that was both invitation and blessing. There was no rush, there was respect, there was no fear, there was faith. And when our hands met, I understood what it means to belong, not to possess, but to be part of something sacred. The room filled with a beautiful silence, now and then the soft sound of a laugh, the murmur of a promise, and amid it all, love grew, not in noise, but in roots.
It felt like stepping through a familiar door and finding something new on the other side. His respect taught me to desire without guilt, and his care taught me what it means to be chosen. I gave him my whispers. He gave me his patience. I offered him my courage. He gave me a harbor. When silence settled over us, there was no exhaustion, only peace, a resting of soul upon soul. And before sleep took me, I heard him whisper, "I'll always be here, my love." I felt a smile bloom within me like light, and at last, I understood. True love is not measured in promises, but in the quiet certainty of the one who stays.
Ravenwell has always known how to care for those who breathe gently. I shaped the house for this. Verandas with mild morning sun, a garden of white tulips that blooms even when the sky hesitates, a glass room where the wind enters politely. The doctor adapted here the remedies I had learned abroad. Simple infusions, warm vapors, oils to ease the chest, short walks at dawn, everything measured with patience. Sophia grew lighter to the eye, less winter upon her shoulders, more laughter. That did not tire. In the afternoons I painted while she read, and in those rare moments when her breath demanded reverence, I counted each rhythm upon the palm of my hand, and the world obeyed. It was within this carefully prepared calm that life chose to hurry. She had carried her pregnancy serenely. The labor came early. The house, which almost never lost its pace, faltered for a moment. Edmund, the Duke, my brother by choice as well as law, was with me in the study, trying to make me believe that brandy soothes and that men afraid are no less noble. "She is stronger than you pretend not to know," he told me, with that serene humor known only to those who love and protect. I paced from one wall to another, a hand to my chest, the other at the window as if my fingers might draw time closer. When Thomas appeared at the door, his face composed, yet his eyes urgent. "My lord, Lady Sophia asks for you." I was already in the corridor before my name had finished echoing. The chamber was warm with candlelight, and the presence of those who knew how to care. My mother, Lady Agatha, steady as an anchor. Yelena, gentle and capable, bringing the kind of calm that listens to the body. Rose, loyal as breath, leaning over the bedside. The physician, attentive. Sophia was flushed, damp, beautiful, and exhausted. The kind of beauty born only when courage comes first. Her eyes sought mine, and in that silent request was contained all the theology I shall ever need. "Let him in," the doctor said. Uncommon for the age, common for love. I shed my coat, climbed onto the bed behind her, fitted my body to hers, my chest against her back, my hands folded with hers. "I am here, my love. Look at me. Let my voice guide you. We will breathe differently this time. Draw air through your nose in 3 counts. 1, 2, 3. And release through the mouth in 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very good. Again. The pain is a wave. When it rises, squeeze my hand. When it falls, rest in my arms. At the next contraction, we'll do this. Short breaths twice, then fill the lungs on the third. Hold for an instant, and push with me in 3 counts. 1, 2, 3, and then release it all slowly. I am here. If you stop, I stop. If you go, I go with you. You can do this, my flower. We are bringing our child into the world. Together. Now, breathe. She nodded, small and infinite all at once, and obeyed. Strength at the right moment. Pause when the body demanded. In minutes I could not measure. I heard a clear cry, heard, "It is a boy," saw my son placed into my hands by the bridge of the physician, and thought no canvas of mine would ever suffice to paint that light. I wept, unashamed. My son, born by my wife. I pressed my face to Sophia's. "Our son, my love," I said, and the words fit whole into my chest. "Thank you, Lord, and thank you, my dearest. He is beautiful." But before I had finished giving thanks, her body arched again. Sophia. Clutched my hands tight. "Oh, this hurts, Edward." And I looked to the physician as one begging a universe. What was happening? Why was she suffering still? A cold dread ran my spine, yet the physician smiled, astonished with joy. "Nothing wrong, my lord. Only another." "Another?" I repeated, and felt the universe make room. "Strength, lady. Sophia," the doctor urged. And my wife was heroine a second time. A few more breaths, more pushes of courage, and the room changed key. Another cry like water striking stone. "It is a girl." I laughed. I wept again. I kissed her wherever. I could brow, temple, corner of her mouth. 2, my love. You have given me 2 children at once. They brought them, and small, perfect, and laid them upon Sophia's chest, which rested upon mine, and my world fit there entire. When all that needed to be done was done, I asked, for a moment alone. Rose understood before I spoke. She prepared a warm bath with the care of a sister. I lifted Sophia into my arms, light as a promise fulfilled, and we entered together, clothed only as modesty required, nothing of sin, everything of tenderness. I washed her hair, her nape, her shoulders. The foam carried away the remnants of pain and left brightness and peace. I am so proud of you, I whispered at her ear between little kisses that asked nothing but rest. So proud of your strength, of your courage, of how you gave me what I did not even know how to ask. This family. She smiled, weary, more beautiful than any painting. I love you, I answered, and a tender kiss sealed what the night had already spoken. I dressed her gently, a light shawl, a clean gown. Rose had already changed the sheets as one changes seasons. Now you must sleep. You need to rest, I asked, and remained at her side until I saw sleep descend. Before leaving, I kissed her brow and gave thanks in silence for all the winters that no longer live here. In the corridor, joy made noise. My mother dabbed at her eyes with discreet pride. Yelena laughed, shaking her head as if to say, I knew it. Rose carried a tray that looked more like a prayer. Edmund pulled me into the study, poured 2 fingers of brandy, thrust a decent cigar into my hand, and lit it with the solemnity of commissioning an officer. We sat a moment in silence, for between men, silence also says, congratulations. He broke first with that humor that never misses its mark. So then, Pembroke, 2 at once, do you mean to survive it? With honor and happiness, I replied, laughing because my body no longer fit my suit. And with help, preferably yours. You shall have it, he said, gripping my hand. I seized the fire of the moment. You know already. You will be godfather to my children. Yelena, godmother. I shall accept no refusal. The Harland steel smile appeared entire. A double honor, my dear friend, and I promise to teach those children how to defeat their father at chess. We shall see, I teased, toasting with the smoke and the Ravenwell breeze, and with conspiratorial humor I added, since we speak of the future, I must double the revenues of my estates. Now I have an heir, and my little daughter will require a dowry to repel poets and attract only gentlemen of irreproachable record. Edmund arched a brow, amused. Ravenwell will provide. The problem shall be the suitors. Already solved, I smiled. I have adopted your Westminster Bridge policy. Any fortune hunter who dares our threshold, I shall personally escort to enjoy the view of the Thames and leave gravity to argue. An excellent public policy, he laughed. Gravity is impartial. And a father's heart, inflexible, I added, raising my glass, to prosperity that yields fortunate legacies and pays indecent dowries, and to the bridge we shall never need, and to my immediate task, I concluded, extinguishing the cigar, to return to the mother of my heirs before she wakes and finds their father already plotting dowries in the first hour of their lives. Speaking of her, your wife silenced the entire household. Even the doctor confided to me that he had rarely seen such courage to take on the risk of pregnancy despite the fragility of her lungs. She surprised me, and she shouldn't. For she has always been that way, I admitted, feeling my chest open. If you knew the fear that seized me before they called my name, I thought my courage would leap straight out the window. I saw your face at the door, man, he laughed. You looked like the Admiralty in a storm. As a brother, I shared your anguish. She is my calm sea. You both deserve this happiness, he said, growing serious in a good way. It took many winters to get here. I shall never thank heaven enough for what I received today. He touched his glass to mine, comrade-like. Then thank it by living. And by loving my sister as you did tonight, every day I vowed, until the last. We toasted with smoke and breeze. The sky over Ravenwell seemed nearer. When I returned, I saw them. The boy with my jaw and Sophia's calm. The girl with her dark hair and her delicacy. God, I know no greater completeness. I stood there, absurdly still, as though any movement might scatter the happiness. I thought of the path to this day, the letters, the voyages, the disciplined waiting. The house slowly expanded to cradle. Our life, all of it worth it. I entered again. Sophia slept deep, those gentle breaths I had learned to count. I laid my palm upon her chest, only to feel the rhythm, and whispered the vow that shall govern me every day. I am here. I care for you. I stay forever. The next morning, Ravenwell awoke to the sound of small bells, the servants whispering names, Rose bringing vapors that yielded before the scent of milk, my mother murmuring a litany of gratitude, Edmund jesting tenderly, "Prepare yourself, friend. Your library will soon know curious fingers," and I, between kisses upon my children, went to the studio for a moment. I opened a fresh canvas. I did not paint a landscape. I painted the symbol. 2 white tulips springing from the same bulb, morning light through the petals, and in the background a streak of color that whispered of summer. In the corner, I wrote what life had taught me slowly until it fit upon the tongue. Forever is every day, and I returned to the room where forever breathed, small and perfect, in the form of the woman I had chosen. 5 years later, Ravenwell sounded like an afternoon that had learned how to laugh. The wind ran low through the oaks, played with the porch curtains, and lay lazily upon the beds of white tulips Sophia tended as though conversing with time. Rose, her belly round with promise, sat a moment to rest her ankles, her phrase, while Thomas, proud husband and father, balanced a basket of bread like a trophy. "Promise kept, my lord," he said when he saw me winking. "The firstborn is named Edward, and for the second, I swear I shall not repeat the audacity." Rose laughed, hand to her waist. A good thing, for if we had another Edward, I should need to number them. We all laughed, and she, with the kindness only women wield, handed me a warm roll. So that my lord never forgets that happiness. Also has a scent. On the lawn our children conspired. Arthur, my firstborn, boots muddy, already an engineer's stance, led the gathering of stones. Maud, my little lady with criteria all her own, judged each pebble by shine and by personality. And little Edward, Rose and Thomas's son, our godson, fondly called Ned, followed behind with the seriousness of those who take tasks to heart. "It is a fortress," Arthur explained when I came near, "against invisible dragons and fathers who steal biscuits." "Outrageous," I replied, feigning offense. Maud, without glancing up, decreed, "Fathers are welcome if they bring stories." I handed over a spare pebble, and construction resumed. Then I saw the scene I always longed to paint. Sophia in the late light, her blue-gray gown obeying the eye. Breeze, her hand caressing the curve of her living belly. Our third child on the way. The faint perfume of tea with honey she had adopted in these months, and a lovely flush upon her cheeks. As I drew near, her eyes were upon a letter, and her smile upon good news. "From whom?" I asked, already guessing the seal, the hand. "From Yelena," she said. "She and Edmund are bound for Russia, visiting her father for some weeks, and promised to return before the year's end." She breathed a laugh. Part girl, part mother. And news. She is expecting again. "Blessed Grantham," I said, feeling that pride that is half friendship, half family. "We are both fortunate men beside our precious ladies." "Not by chance, but by choice," she replied, with the firm, sweet gaze that always straightens me. I touched the letter, then her hand, then the place where our future beat. "You will be my next painting," I confessed low. "With tulips, and this sun, I wish to keep the exact afternoon I saw you thus." "Keep everything," she said, drawing closer, with the gentle voice that always soothes me. "But kiss first." I obeyed with the devotion of the ancients. One kiss upon her brow, my gratitude. One at the corner of her smile, my request. And at last her lips, my private paradise, I love you, Sophia Pembroke. I spoke against her mouth as one signs a charter. She framed my face in her hands, that gesture which disarms me since the first time. And I love you, my dear Edward, lord of my heart. Beside us, Arthur raised a foundational stone. Maud declared that fortresses must have flowers to scent the victory, and Ned added that invisible dragons, too, enjoy bread with butter. Rose clicked her tongue, fixing from afar a bow that would not stay. Thomas pledged allegiance to every fortress with punctual sentinels and well-polished boots, and the Ravenwell sky set itself down gently, granting us time to laugh a little. Longer. When Edmund arrives with Yelena and her rounded news, we shall open wine and windows. Until then, we content ourselves with the daily edition of our favorite journal, The Noise of Children. Rose's notes of care, vapors, rest, infusions at the right hour, the wind signing its name in the tulips, and this certainty I now write from within outward. Life, when well loved, learns to speak softly and to last long. If this garden has reached you, breathe with me. One like to enter, one comment to stay, one subscription to follow. Tell me in the comments which scene stole your breath. Was it Pembroke? Was it Sophia? And share it with those who love elegant, intense romance. Ring the bell so you do not miss the next stories. And if you have not yet seen the tale of Duke Edmund and Yelena, I'll leave it for you on the end screen and in the pinned comment. Hurry to watch. Thank you for savoring this romance, which I wrote especially because you asked for it. A kiss to your heart, and until the next story of love.